Greetings, sacred beings. Welcome to Sacred Her Story podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Natasia. Today, for Sacred Her Story guest speaker, we have Dr. Eghosa Obaizamomwan Hamilton, who is a Black mother scholar who prioritizes scholarship in service of her community. She's a veteran educator with 16 years of K through 12 experiences. Thank you for your service.
Thank
Her,
you.
her research and teaching focus on Black educational studies, Black critical race theory, Black feminist thoughts, intersectionality, and the sociology of race and education. She is the co-founder of a nonprofit organization called Making Us Matter and a co-founding editor of the Black Educology mixtape journal. Her work explored interdisciplinary themes deeply informed by and engaging with Black intellectual traditions, as seen in her forthcoming book, Articulations, a Radical Mythology for Black Pedagogy, redefining education through Black women's hair experiences. OMG. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Dr.
Thank you.
Agosa, welcome, welcome. Thank you for
Appreciate
being here.
it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is quite an incredible bio you have here. I'm just like, oh, there's that word pedagogy. I know you are
Uh-huh.
a teacher, and I was just
Yep.
talking about this word this week, going, I hate that word. Like, what is pedagogy? Can you please explain this pedagogy? And
Yes.
let's just dive in because I like here you have this book coming up. I mean, there's so many places to start with you because your background is pretty incredible as well, you know. Um, but you do have this book, and I do want to talk about that word pedagogy since I have another scholar here with me.
For
So
sure.
let's start with your background first. Like, what did you always know you were going to be a teacher, and then here you are now, this co-founder, which I love how, it's um where is it making us matter, and so you have all these things going on, but was this something you always felt was a calling, or did you know you were going to go into education and do all the things
Mm.
that you're doing?
I appreciate being on here so much, and I appreciate that first question. I think for me, I just know like in third grade, maybe I said I wanted to be an educator. Um, but coming from a Nigerian family, that's not necessarily the like career track. A lot of Nigerian folks go into, the medical field, engineering, just totally different. So I know I said it early on, and I can't say why at that point. A lot of young kids, they see teachers, they want to be a teacher. But I did say that, and then kind of got discouraged, especially because financially, a lot of people said you're not going to make a lot of money, and that's not exactly the career that you should be kind of working towards. So when I went to college, I majored in sociology because I love the study of people, society, being able to kind of theorize on my own. I initially started with psychology, but a Black woman who was a descendant of a slave I met at the Holocaust Museum told me to not do psychology because that's their way of looking at the world, where sociology, you could create your own. That really stuck with me. And so when I switched to sociology, it was a really impactful major for me to have because of the way that I think. And then I had a minor in English and ethnic studies. So all the things that I think you still see today in me as a researcher, which is like a very interdisciplinary approach to thinking about conceptualizing and interacting with the world.
Mhm.
Um, and I went into teaching after college because one, I had lost my mother after college. And I think for me, I needed to go into a career that felt like it had some purpose, a career that felt like I could try to mirror or match the impact that my mom had on people's lives, in my own kind of way. And so I went into teaching right after that, and I've been there ever since.
Incredible, incredible. And it's in here, all your books, everything that you do is, around. Black history, the Black feminist, and, Black educational studies. Can you share more about what these books or research or teaching focus that really, what was your point? What was the background behind all three of these I guess studies on Black
Mm,
educational studies, Black critical race theory, and Black feminist thoughts?
mm. Yeah, I mean, I think as a Black woman, all of those things you kind of interact with without really knowing the theory behind it. So when I started at the University of San Francisco in 2020, I was immersed in courses, classes with people who were in this kind of category where I was looking at things like Black feminist thought, reading Patricia Hill Collins' work, where I started understanding critical race theory. One of the classes I took was critical race theory,
Mhm.
and all the branches from it, which include Black crit, which is essentially more specifically looking at the experience of Black people under the lens of race. And Black educational studies is actually kind of a newer thing because there's a work by, I want to say Dumas and Ross or Givens and Ross that talks about we have such powerful departments in higher ed that is Black studies or educational studies, but we don't have a lot that integrate the two. So this kind of field of Black educational studies is something that I hope more people take heed to because I think it's so important and so connected to a lot of things that we do and how we move through the society. So for me, all of them were important and they all center Blackness, which I think is core to my research lane. And when I do research, I want to make sure that I am one, focusing on the Black community, two, doing so from a way that I think contributes to the field, of course, but also amplifies all the amazing things that Black people do in and outside of the educational field.
Wow, amazing. I love it. Let's talk about Blackness. What is Blackness? Because I feel
hmm
like that word means so many different things to different people, and it depends on who you're talking to.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on where you're coming from.
Yeah.
For some people, there's a very narrow definition of what Blackness is. For others, that includes everything across the diaspora. For me, because I am first gen Nigerian and if I didn't say my name, I would walk through this country as a Black American, right? No one
Mm.
would be like, hey, you look like you're Nigerian. I don't get that very often. I think I have like a perspective that kind of bridges the two, that the experiences across the diaspora, and what it means to be Black are all very connected. So, although the way Blackness functions may be different in Brazil or Nigeria, right, because of the different dynamics,
Mhm.
there's still like a common thread amongst Black people in terms of our ancestry, in terms of our creativity, in terms of our ingenuity, that I think is always going to keep us connected, even though we have these experiences that transnationally can differ based on the society that we're in. So Blackness in the US has a very particular um, experience and category, right? If we think about it as a caste system, Blackness would be at the bottom in the US context, right? And so I think ultimately, yes, there's nuance and there's variety and what it means to be Caribbean Black, Nigerian Black, Southern Black, are all built into totally different experiences, yet there's a common thread that I think is beautiful about us as a people.
What is that common thread?
To me, it is the creativity and ingenuity that allows us to continue to persist and make sure that our existence is permanent, regardless of the circumstances. I think in each context, although very different, you'll still see subjugation of Blackness across the world in different ways and different capacities. Yet here we still are, and that's kind
Yeah.
of what I think is the glue.
Yeah, and I was like thinking, how there's so much mix going on, with the different ethnicities and races that are out there. And, for me being of half and half, or it's even deeper than that, as I learn my history. But there is this thing with, being Black. And
Hmm.
even within the Black community and being with your community, that's a whole nother um, experience in itself, you
For
know?
sure.
And so I love how you're sharing how, there's that creativity and the ingenuity, like that continual persistent. And how, you did mention that, Blacks were seen as at the bottom, but yet here, we have some that's saying, telling us, hey, you can rise up. Let's rise up. And you see, people, rising and showing up, talking about the Black experience. What is the Black experience? What is your version of the Black experience?
What is the Black experience? I think
Yeah.
my personal Black
Yeah.
experience, I can talk a little bit about, right? And there are some the I want to say it's Patricia Hill Collins who talks about standpoint theory,
Mhm.
which is a theoretical lens that says that, there is something that brings us together about our experiences that ties us and makes us connected. And there's also, we all have different experiences, right? You'll see people who might say, I have never experienced racism in my life,
Mhm.
America first or whatever, who are also Black. And so that's not to negate those nuances, but if we think about both history,
Mhm.
theory, and real world experiences, I think we can see that part of the Black experience is finding ways to navigate a world that doesn't always see us as human or equal or worthy in different ways.
Mm, so good. I'm like, wow. I'm like, I have a researcher right here. Can we dive into the Black feminist thought?
Hmm.
Like, and that word feminist, that may trigger some of us, but this is the Black feminist thought.
Yeah,
Can
yeah.
you share about that? Like, can we dive into that?
I mean, yeah, 100%. I think for me growing up, feminism never really felt like something that I could be a part of. For me, the way that feminism looked excluded a lot of my own experiences and values. So, and I think that's why you'll see folks who come up with womanism, which is supposed to be more inclusive and thoughtful around the intersectional experiences of women of color. Um, Mickey Kendall has a book called Hood Feminism, where she kind of does a deep dive of feminism and what it leaves out, and this idea of hood feminism being more reflective of her experience as a Black woman. Um, and then you have Black feminist thought, which is really trying to integrate that the experiences of Black women um, have to have a lens that allows people to kind of see a little bit more about our experiences at the intersectional lane. And it's really like it came about because when people talked about the Black experience, often they were thinking about Black men. You still see that today with police shootings, where a lot of the coverage is around Black men when there have been a lot of Black women who have lost their lives, right? When you think about feminism, oftentimes you're thinking about white women. You look at the Me Too that has happened and the sexual assault media, um, how big that was. You saw a lot of white women. And so effectively, both of these things leave Black women out. So Black feminist thought recenters our experiences and allows us to speak from a lens and a gaze that acknowledges our specific experiences.
Mm, wow. I was like thinking, I go, what does the feminist leave out? What do you feel it leaves out?
Well, Audre Lorde, wrote the letter to Mary Daly way back in the day that basically was like, y'all are missing a big part of the feminist movement by not including Black voices. I think that's definitely a letter.
Mm,
That's, I believe, the letter where she says the master's tools cannot, we cannot use the master's tools to disrupt the master's house or whatever, that pretty famous quote. Um, and I think in the Mickey Kendall Hood Feminism, I think she brings up a really important thing where she talks about like feminism, like you have the Women's March and they had the pink hats and the bracelets, and it's about freeing the nipple when really when you look at women's issues across different identities, those are not the concerns. The current concerns are more rooted in, women have the highest poverty rate in this country, and kids are suffering because of that. Where are the women's movements and marches for that at the front line? And I think what both and a lot of women are trying to say about what feminism is missing is it tends to center, you know, issues that are broadly missing a large swath of people, even with, um, we talk about what's Roe versus Wade, the abortion law that was overturned under this administration.
Mm,
Obviously, that's an issue for women across the board, and people have been talking about that, but we haven't really talked about the disparity of birth support, pregnancy support for Black women and women of color, the high maternity death rate for Black women in this country, of a country that is supposed to be advanced. Those things are not centered. We don't talk about the lack of support when the babies are here for people as much, and so we think about bodily autonomy and we think about these things that are high issues, but what about the lack of bodily autonomy for women who have been imprisoned and have been, unbeknownst to them, uh, they have had their tubes tied and are no longer to have children, right? Like these things have happened and they are continuing to happen, and those voices aren't centralized enough. So I think
mm.
long-winded way of saying feminism leaves out a lot of different aspects that need to be amplified.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Or I'm like listening and I'm like, that's a lot of things that are just not addressed.
Hmm.
Um, and for me, like having my three children, it was I felt pretty supported, but when you talk to other people that are from other states, it's a whole different ball game. And I
Hmm.
was like, what? What?
Hmm.
Like it's unbelievable to me, so it's like each of our own experiences, where we're at, how the community, like there was a lot of stuff. Poverty, women have the highest poverty rate. And that's so true. Like the male, they do, whatever happens, like usually the woman has the kids or the other way around it happened. I'm not taking that part out, but like really, like I think of my own grandmother who raised seven children by herself, you
Hmm.
know, and
Hmm.
it was like in my head, I never wanted to be a single parent because that's where I'm going to end up.
Hmm.
And although my life was different because I was educated and had a decent career, but it's still, when you're raising children, just having a family, it's a lot. And then
Hmm.
the whole aspect that you brought up, like in the prison system, with women getting their tube tied, where are their rights,
Hmm.
and yeah, I never looked at feminism as leaving, other women out, other situations.
Hmm.
So for you to like bring that up, it like makes you really think like, wow. So pretty much whoever say they're feminist, it depends on each person, it seems. What are you fighting for? What is it really that you want to share and bring to the table and bring to awareness? Because I know with women health, that's a huge thing too, because um, at a certain age, our hormone shifts and changes.
Hmm.
And we have doctors who are like, no, we're not going to,
Hmm.
test your hormones. You don't need to do it right now. And it's like, well, I'm at that age, and so there's that whole part of it of there's stuff missing,
Hmm.
right? And there
Hmm.
was something you were saying. I'm trying to remember. I thought I wrote it down. Trying to go back, but I'm like, I'm getting stuck. Where, oh, like how you were saying how you met that lady who said don't get into psychology because how it doesn't let you, expand even broader. It's what they taught, and you're teaching through this system, and that same like all around. It's like things are changing. It's not just what you think, there's so much more out there, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. I want to read this Black feminist thoughts.
Hmm.
You're like,
You can definitely check it out. Yep. I have a PDF of it that I got in grad school, and I think, yeah, it's definitely an important read
yeah, please, yeah, please share. I would
for sure.
really, really like that. Tell us about your co-founder. You're a co-founder of a nonprofit organization, and you're an editor. So, I mean, more and more stuff. Like everything is just like in this beautiful alignment with you. You taught, you know, and we're going to come back to that pedagogy stuff, but
Yep.
you're sharing like, so you taught 16 years, then you started doing research that focused on Black education studies, all that stuff, and now you also have this nonprofit organization. Tell us about that. How long have you had it? What what's your purpose? I mean, I think the name tells it all, but in your perspective.
Yeah, these are both Black Educology and Making Us Matter were projects that were spurred out of the University of San Francisco, with different
Okay.
people and our, spaces that were created by Dr. Colette Can to allow Black grad students to kind of meet and think and create together. So Making Us Matter, Gertrude Jenkins, who is the co-founder, she during the school shutdowns was like, what are our kids doing when school is out, when they're at home? Like, how are they? This is a really good opportunity to like create curriculum that centers, humanizes, and emphasizes Black communities, Black culture, Black learnings, Black ways of being. And
Mhm.
so both her and I kind of worked together, and we basically created like courses. And then through a kind of community engaged praxis, we kind of pulled together different Black folks who were experts in their field, maybe not teachers, someone who was in
Okay.
law school where helped us teach a Know Your Rights class. We had someone who was a professor, um, who was teaching our like math and gentrification class. We were able to pull community members, like someone who was into botany, to teach our environmental racism class. And
Oh,
both her and I, obviously, we were basically helping folks create curriculum, organize it in a way, lesson plan that as teachers we know kind of is most engaging. And we hosted these classes virtually. We had a schedule where students would show up. We worked with middle school to high school students, teaching these different classes. And it was like, in part substituting the lack of learning that was happening during the school shutdowns, but also for some students who were in school virtually as well, it was like, wow, curriculum that is reflective of me, my life, and that is interesting and engaging and allows me the ability to critically reflect on the world. And so that project, we ran classes for, I want to say maybe 2.5 years. And then we've kind of moved into different places like creating curriculum for high schools. We created a curriculum centering the movie 13th by Ava DuVernay. We've done some work with creating affinity spaces and teacher ed programs. So that work was a beautiful kind of amalgamation of all the things I was learning at the time in USF. And then Black Educology, same thing, a group of Black students coming together. How do we create space for our voices? And there are journals, of course, like the Journal of Negro Education, the Journal of Black Studies. But to what I was speaking to earlier, we wanted a space that was Black and education meeting at this nexus.
mhm,
And we created it ourselves, right? We wanted to fill
mhm.
this gap, but we created it. And that journal, we are actually currently working on publishing our fourth volume. So this has been going on for since like 2021 for both projects. And we have been growing and working with some dynamic scholars from Dr. Bettina Love, Dr. David Stovall, Dr. Tiffany Marie, and Kendris Watson. We're going to be working with Dr. Jamila, Dr. J, as she goes by, and Dr. Cesare Warren. We are just really centering Black scholars and then making space for people who are in the academic world, people who are in the community, young people who are still in high school, to all publish in an open access journal that centers Blackness within the educational field.
Wow, that's incredible. I love all the collaboration that's happening there. It's
Mhm.
incredible and it's and the community, it's so important to bring back community. You
Yes.
know, um we've been so separated from each other where it feels like, who can I even turn to? But here, you're bringing all this together like,
Yeah.
hey, let's help one another and bring in other people to help serve and bless those children. And
Hmm.
I think what's really incredible is how, all these individual, even without degrees, but, lawyers, engineers, saying like, hey, you can do this too. And this is what it
Exactly.
has to take, and we don't, I feel like, those who just don't know, they wouldn't have access. And here you're bringing this so it's accessible to your community, to your area,
Yeah.
which is beautiful. Do you see it expanding beyond your community and going outward, or is it really just kind of focusing in your general area?
Beyond my community, as in the Black community, or beyond like USF, or what do you
Yeah,
mean?
beyond USF, beyond yeah.
I think USF for me, the School of Education, International and Multicultural Education specifically, was such a special hub that all of these ideas are came about because we had the space and we had the faculty and the advisors and the mentors to push us to think of the possibilities and then go for it. So I do think part of it is staying connected to USF, like the Black Educology Journal is still in the repository at USF because that's where it was founded. That's where it's most reflective of the type of scholarship and university that, well, specifically IME that we want to engage with. Um, so I think there's that, but part of both Making Us Matter and Black Educology is also to highlight the possibility. So what we've
Mhm.
done with Black Educology, we would love to see people do the same thing at their universities and build out accordingly, right?
Mhm.
Critical race theory is a beautiful example of this. You have critical race theory as the core theoretical framing. And as people learned about critical race theory and built from it, then you have queer crit, you have disability crit, you have Black crit, you have Latin crit, you have all these branches that have built off of this core idea because that core idea was rooted in all the things that allowed for that. And I think with Black Educology, and even Making Us Matter, that is kind of the goal. Like, what can be created after seeing the possibilities here? How can people build and connect their communities? And then how can we be part of that
Yeah.
connection so that we have this really beautiful community-centered, community organized, community-led, community-funded practices across.
That's a beautiful, because, here you see that there's these separate parts, so that, everyone can be heard, right? We gravitate toward likes, but yet coming together to help one another to bring in that unity. I think that's so sacred and beautiful
Mhm.
because I feel like, yes, 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 this is great. And I think that was where I was curious, like, what does this look like? What is it? Because it's like, I hear, yes, Black community, we're all, to raise our voices, to be seen and be heard as well. Like we are all one. And how does that look with everyone, like not just in the vicinity of the community, your area, but outward and beyond the nation, the world, So I was
Mhm.
just kind of like, you know, hearing how it's developed, it's very beautiful. And that's
It is.
incredible. must be something so amazing to be a part of, and see and develop.
Yeah.
So thank you for all you do, Dr. Egosa. That is just incredible.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so tell us about this forthcoming book,
Mm.
Articulations, a radical mythology for Black pedagogy. That
Hmm.
word, redefining education through Black women's hair experiences. Oh, this is
Yeah.
like such an incredible book.
Yeah. It I am really I think sometimes I have trouble sitting and like taking a moment to like celebrate the accomplishment. And I think I'm still working on that, but I am ultimately really proud of this work. It's work that was built from my dissertation, which I started in, I don't know, 2022, 2023, and published my dissertation, defended my dissertation, and then took those learnings to really begin this work with the book. So lots of labor for sure. But really, I think I'm most proud because I started this research for myself. Um, I'm continuing this research for my daughter. I think this research represents so many beautiful things and moments and understandings and learnings that I got verbally and non-verbally from my mom. And so it means a lot to me. And then there are 7 women that I work with for this study that are part of this book as well. And I ultimately want to represent their stories and their sharings and their knowledge in a way that reflects the type of researcher that I want to be, which is a researcher that goes in to build with, to learn with, and to really center healing, um, reflection in the spaces that I'm in. And so this book at its core, I am sharing with the world why it is important that we understand, first of all, the significance of Black women, the significance of Black hair, the significance of Black women educators, those experiences, those like ways in which all three have been perceived, subjugated, etc., and then how they all intersect.
Mhm.
How do these all three kind of weave together to better support our understanding of education, pedagogy, Black women? And so, and hair. And I think for me, the core piece in learning is hair is part of our intersectional identity in a way that I don't know that we center enough. We talk a lot about understanding race and gender, right? We talk a
Mhm.
lot about sometimes race, gender, sexuality, race, gender, class, but very rarely do you hear people also say hair. And for Black women in particular, hair is very much a part of our intersectional identity. In fact, it is a racial identifier more often than not for Black women than any other group. So that is kind of like the impetus of the work. And I think what I've done in the book is talk about Black hair in a way that I hope shares all the different ways in which we move through hair and our hair journeys, all the different messages we get about hair from straight to afros, all the different ways in which we wear them and what those wearings mean and how those wearings are perceived. And then also to kind of take off, I don't want to like there's facts, right? Straight hair has been perceived as better, and locks and afros has been perceived as not as good for many reasons, right?
Mhm.
Those are facts. And I also want to elevate that Black women also choose to wear their hair in all these different ways, and none is neither right nor wrong, but we do have to understand the historical context of all of that. And then for Black women educators, this is really rooted in my own story of going from straight to protective to locks and how that impacted my pedagogy, which, as you've said before, pedagogy is really how you teach, how you are teaching in your classroom, how you are teaching and giving students the ability to access the learning and what that looks like. So for me, it was, yeah, when I first started teaching, I was trying to be a good teacher in the way that I thought it was supposed to be, from my credential program to being in a very suburban school and I was just more amenable, more, taking on kind of what was told versus when I had my locks, where I was very clear about who I was. Therefore, I was clear about the pedagogy and the practice that I wanted to center, and not in, when I was doing my protective style, I was kind of doing like a little bit of both, but like really leaning all the way in. So the book was really built off of my own experience as well, and just how are Black women's pedagogies being impacted by their hair journeys, if at all.
Yeah.
And I discovered so many amazing, beautiful things. And I think in the book, you'll see some of those findings. You'll see me theorizing about what it means, and really central to why this book started, even though I think it's morphed into like more. But I was first asked to do this book to center the methodology, which is a way to do research. And so I had created the 4C methodology, which is 4C is the most coarse hair type. And I made it that way because I wanted to center the most discriminated hair type and texture, and amplify it into this methodology that I thought was a way to value Black women researchers, Black women embodied intuition, do research in a way that was not extractive, but really giving back to the community in the ways that I knew how as an educator, researcher. And then the moisturized and wrapped healing circles was the method I used to gather all the data, which essentially was me working with these 7 women for 2.5 hours once a month to create poetry, to do art, to discuss, to watch and reflect on pop culture, to co-construct. And so it's all of that is in this book. It's really that journey, how I got to this research point. I'm mixing my own personal reflections, work from the study and the women that I was working with, and also, as I said, the transdisciplinary approach, thinking about the sociological implications, going historically, looking at Black hair across time, and all that. Brief, there's so much I could
There's
talk
so
about, but like
much. Yeah.
that's like the gist of all the things.
Wow. And it sounds like so much went into it with the monthly um, gatherings with these women too. That's wow. And how powerful that is to have you all come together and
Hmm.
talk about, your own sacred journey as well,
Hmm.
right? And now here you are with locks, and you're
Hmm.
sharing like your own journey, like having straight hair, and then,
Yeah.
so share about what do these locks mean to you?
A lot. Wow. Yeah. I published an autoethnography in the Harvard Ed Review, which I was shocked that it was published there, because I'm talking about myself, right? Autoethnography is like an excavation of your own story. So in that, I talk about exactly these 3 stages of my teaching journey. Because when I was growing up, my mom would braid my hair. Sometimes she would relax it, sometimes she would straighten it, did all that. But when I started teaching, it was like I was doing a lot of the straight, and then kind of moved from there from when I started. So for me, I started locks during COVID shutdowns. And I'd always teetered with locks, like, I think I want to do them. I don't know, but by that time, like with COVID, I had been pretty consistent in doing protective styles, whether I was getting like faux locks or braids or a twist out, 2-strand twist out. I was always doing protective styles of some sort. And then when COVID happened and we were at home, I feel like I felt like the release of control in terms of how my hair is perceived. Even with protective styles, of course, braids have their connotations, right? But still, with protective styles, there's a level of like neatness and length, and texture that I can create with those styles that would make life easy, and I can still go to work and do what I'm doing. With locks, I think I was afraid. Like, there's a lot of connotation with locks and what that means and who you are. And with locks, you also aren't in control anymore. Once you lock your hair, the stages that it goes through in order for it to get to, being fully locked, those are stages. And the length and the texture and the neatness is just not in your control anymore. And so for me, being away from the institution and working from home, I felt like the weight released, and that I can just do it and not have to worry about the white gaze in any way at all. And that was a game changer for me. And I loved the journey. Of course, there were stages where I was like, oof, like I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to style it. The length isn't necessarily what I want, but I went through it and enjoyed it and the freedom of it. And now today in 2026, I've never seen my hair this long, first and foremost, like growing up doing all the different stuff to my hair. My natural hair, I've never seen it at this length. And this is in two-strand twist, so this is even shorter than what it actually is. Um, and it feels healthy. It feels like me. It feels reflective in terms of the like cultural history of locks and what it means of like who I want to be. And I think for me, it's been a beautiful process. And I have a 3-year-old, and she she has already asked, like, hey, I want locks like you. And my husband's like, yeah, let's just do it. But I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like the journey of knowing yourself by knowing your hair is something that is really important. So for my daughter, yes, it'd be easier for us to lock her hair and then just figure out how to do it from there.
Mhm.
But right now, I've been enjoying keeping her hair healthy, doing different styles. Her texture is so full and beautiful. And I want her to see her fro. I want her to see her in braids. I want her to see her in a twist. I want her to play with her hair before she decides like she wants to lock it up. And I think it's really beautiful that she sees me and sees something that she wants with regard to hair. That's really amazing to me. And I also know it's really important for her at just 3 to experience many years of her hair in many ways. I just think it's important. And I think it helps you understand yourself. So yeah.
That's so beautiful. I love how you shared and express, you know, how you want her to have her own opinion and to experience different styles. I feel like that is so important. I go, maybe down the road, I'll get my locks done because it'll be, like there's something you said, it gets easier. And, when you're straightening and doing all the things, it gets tiresome,
Hmm.
and I feel like everyone I've been seeing with locks, I'm like, oh my gosh, it looks so good. And you're over here like, well, it goes through the different stages, but
Yeah.
it for 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 Black women, our hair is really our identity. Whether
Hmm.
we want to admit to it or not, we spend a lot of money on our hair trying to
Hmm.
figure out how it works and stuff. And, even for me, like being mixed, my hair went through several series of like coarseness to realizing, oh, I do have curly hair, but how do I keep the curls in?
Hmm.
And then I've even had braids. I love the braids because I could just get up and my hair's done. And
Yep.
my daughter, who's even more mixed, she did get, some of that coarseness from my hair from me.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
she's like, well, I like braids. So she's even playing with braids. But like when you look at her hair, there's that coarseness of like what to do with it. And then
Hmm.
considering my mom wasn't a Black woman, she wasn't able to educate me on that
Hmm.
so it's so beautiful that your daughter gets to experience all the things with you
Hmm.
and your story and how you came and just your story of like sharing about your hair. It's incredible too, because it's like, you went through this whole part where there was like, should I, is it in the workplace that you had to be separated, ripped from it to say, let me try this now. I can
Hmm.
have the freedom.
Hmm. Hmm.
So thank you. Thank you.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So before we close
Yeah.
this chapter of Sacred Her story, what is one piece of wisdom you wish your younger self had known?
Hmm. Wow. Um, yeah, that's a tough one. I think my younger self was doing a lot of searching, um, and trying to understand the world, always through a creative lens, though. Like I always was writing poetry, doing scrapbooks. I think the wisdom that I would have to pass on and impart is that something along the lines of in order to really know yourself, um, you have to know yourself. And I know that seems like nebulous, but it's like you have to know yourself through your hair. You have to know yourself through your race. You have to know yourself through your gender. It There are so many things that come at you as a young Black girl that I think it's easy to get lost and not have a sense of self. And so to be really rooted in that and take the time. And I really appreciate my parents for encouraging reading because I got to escape into books and learn through books in ways that I think were really helpful. And maybe I didn't know it at the time. At 13, reading, The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison or Why Are
Mm,
All the Black Kids Sitting at the Cafeteria Table by Beverly Tatum. I didn't maybe fully understand at the time, but I do think it had an impact on my understanding of self. So I just wish earlier me had more understanding of that and took time to know myself a little bit more.
thank you. So beautiful. And you are teaching that to your younger self, right?
Mm-hmm.
And last question, what is one truth or life lesson that you feel called to share with our audience or even with your daughter as they walk on their own journeys?
Um, I think what I would want to impart on my daughter, but also, yeah, I think to go across the board, is that how I want her to move through the world with a, a humanizing lens on people and on herself. Um, and I think that if I can keep that as part of her core understanding, it'll help her be kind and critical to herself and the world. And by critical, I mean reflective, right? A deeper understanding, the nuanced ways in which the world works, and an intellectual yet empathetic and embodied approach to all the things that are going to come her way. And ultimately, I think right now, particularly, the world could use a humanizing lens.
I completely agree. Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Is there anything else you want to share in closing?
I would share, I would love for people to engage with the work, to read the work. And um, I'm the type of researcher that I actually love to engage with the community itself. So, whether it's on social or email, I'm always responsive to people who are interested in engaging in the work, talking about the work, reflecting on it. So I would say I definitely would love that. And yeah.
Thank you. And absolutely. So to get in touch with Dr. Eghosa and to learn more about her work, her information will be in the description. So if today's story moved you, inspired you, or reminded you that you're not walking this path alone, I invite you to follow and subscribe and to also reach out to Dr. Eghosa. She has a lot of great stuff. I'm going to dive in also. And this is where real women share their raw, unfiltered becoming, the sacred, the messy, the powerful. And thank you for joining us, for she is sacred her, that is sacred, highly exalted rebel. It is saying yes to ourselves and trusting in our own inner wisdom. And thank you so much, Dr. Eghosa, for being here, for us to celebrate you in all your accomplishments, in all that you bring to your community, to all of us who are listening, to dive into our own humanism.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this.
Thank you. I appreciate the space and I appreciate this beautiful podcast.
Thank you. Thank you all.